actually played Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and now officially consider myself a Xenoblade fan, it's time to really talk about like some of the weird things I've seen in this community over the years. Because for those of you who don't know, when I came into the scene around like 2012, 2013, I tried to play the original Xenoblade, didn't like it. And over the years, like played X, played 2, didn't like those. And then like it was 3 that really made me like really love the games and really appreciate them. I think I just prefer 3 from like a conceptual standpoint and what it does and its tone and stuff like that. Like I just don't think 1 or 2 are nearly as good. I really appreciate X for like how like innovative it was at the time and like how much it pushed like the open world genre further. But like I think 3 is like kind of the moment for me that I really began to see like that Xenoblade was going to be a huge, phenomenal JRPG franchise. And right now, we're in this weird coping session where people don't want to admit it, right? We're in this weird period where people are saying that like 3 bombed or it failed or that it was censored or that it did this and that. And it's just like it's just so completely off base with reality, right? You know, the big thing I keep seeing people bring up is this idea that like 3 did not do as well as 2, you know, completely ignoring the fact that 2 was a standalone game and launched early in the Switch's life cycle, you know, December of 2017. So there weren't a lot of other JRPGs on the platform. So to me, I think that says more about like the timing of the release and just Xenoblade becoming increasingly mainstream that led to 2 being such a huge cultural thing in Japan and you know, a cult favorite here, right? Like that's kind of my mindset towards 2. Like this idea that people have that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and even something in others even games in other series like Metroid Dread, No More Heroes 3, what was the other one? Shin Megami Tensei 5, there was something else. You know, Mario and Luigi Brothership. Like, there's this Fire Emblem Engage. Yeah, that's the big one. Like, there's this mindset among the community that, like, oh no, those games have failed. Oh, like other games in these series have done better. Oh, like every single time like Metroid Dread in particular is a really good example of this phenomenon because like the mindset when that game came out was that it failed, it was disappointing, it wasn't what people wanted it to be, that fans were let down by it, it's such an underwhelming experience, like, you know, Super was better, like Nintendo doesn't know how to make Metroid games. And then like you look at like the actual fan reception, when you actually see like people like me who are coming out and saying, yeah, it's better than Super, it's better than Prime, it's better than like, you know, all of this stuff. It's about on par with like the rest of the series. Like the more you play it, the more you understand like what Dread is trying to set out to do and just why it's better than something like Hollow Knight, for example, right? Like there was like this really stubborn refusal to admit that Dread was anything spectacular. And it really brought me back to like, you know, growing up in the Fusion era, right? Where like everybody was screaming at you, like, don't play Fusion, no matter what you do, don't play Fusion, it's not as good as Super, it's not as good as Prime, like, it's a huge disappointment, and then you actually play it, and it's great. You know, like, it's a great game, and, you know, now, these days, you're seeing people try and hype up Fusion, and trying to say that, like, Dread is a step down from that, which is, of course, laughable to any of us who, like, grew up in the Fusion era, you know, who grew up in the Zero Mission era, who saw people like cry about like the about these games and how they weren't as like what Metroid should be, you know, like it's just the reality of this like hobby, right? Where you just have a lot of people who are actively trying to keep the discussion of every major Nintendo property negative, you know, whether it's Fire Emblem or Zelda, Pokemon, like the list goes on and on. Like there's always this overwhelming consensus before the game even comes out that it's never going to live up to the old games, and then like it does. like almost every single time. Like I'm not gonna say like it never happens, like there are definitely games I could like point to and say that like they aren't as good as other entries in the series, like Fire Emblem Fates, Yoshi's Story, uh Pikmin 4. But like these are just titles that just are once in a blue moon things, but are so universally like considered to be inferior to other games in their respective franchises that like people don't necessarily see the need to like attack them the way they do for like legitimately fantastic games like Metroid Dread or Mario and Luigi Brothership, right? In a weird way, you don't see as much like insane conspiracies about Pikmin 4 because like no plenty of its fans are like willing to acknowledge its very real problems, right? This is like kind of my feeling going to Xenoblade is that like the shocking thing about this series to me is that it is no different. And the thing that really interests me about this is that this doesn't seem to have been a thing back when Xenosaga and Xenogears were being made. Like there wasn't really this obsessive compulsive need to downplay the newer games in order to like prop up the older ones. It seems almost exclusively to be a Nintendo phenomenon. And I think that's what happened with Xenoblade, because I think up until like 2 came out, there were a lot of people who were like, like sitting on NeoGAF, jacking off to Yuri, and they were just like, I can't wait to play Xenoblade on my high-end gaming PC. Only be told that like it's a Nintendo-owned studio and it's a first-party game and it's not actually coming out on PC ever, and that still is not available on PC and never will be. So like that there was that weird period when like Xenoblade was becoming super super popular, where people like had to catch on to the fact that like, wait a minute, this is a Nintendo property and this isn't coming to PC and it'll never come to PC. And so that led to the radical just kind of shift in the mindset, in the presentation, where like people suddenly had to start talking badly about Xenoblade. When X came out, people shit on that and said it was inferior to the original. And then when 2 came out, they tried to say it was inferior to the original. And now like they're doing the same thing with 3, like trying to make it out as if these games had some like serious decline in quality, when that really couldn't be farther from the truth at all. Like again, you see so many people coping and seething about like the decisions they've made with this series and this IP, like trying to find something to complain about in regards to it. But I think in a lot of ways, Xenoblade is well on its way to becoming like a really solid like Nintendo B string franchise. Fire Emblem is like A-list now. So like Xenoblade is kind of gonna take its place as like the niche B string Nintendo franchise, like for a smaller dedicated like audience of people who want to put like hundreds of hours into their JRPGs, right? Like Xenoblade to me is proof that the narrative that Nintendo doesn't create anything new, that they don't like go outside their wheelhouse, that they don't make games towards like mature gamers. Like Xenoblade, alongside games like Metroid Dread, like No More Heroes 3, like Bayonetta 3, like it really disproves the notion that Nintendo doesn't appeal to hardcore gamers at all, right? And without that specific narrative, like the entire image that the game journos and PlayStation have built up to like demean them over the years completely falls apart. When you have Bayonetta 3 on a console, like when it is the best action game on any platform in the past decade, right? Like they're gonna have to come out and do everything they possibly can to damage control it. So what happens with Bayonetta 3? They complain about the voice actor, they complain about like the ending, they complain about demon summoning, they complain about the visual. They do everything but talk about the actual game. Okay. which all in all is just significantly better than like all of its competition. It's better than Devil May Cry 5. It's probably going to be better than Ninja Gaiden 4, right? Like what action game are you playing that's better than Bayonetta 3? Right? What open world game are you playing that's better than Breath of the Wild? Right? Like, what JRPG are you playing that's better than Pokemon? Right? Like, the reality of where we're at right now shows us that the gaming community needs to downplay Xenoblade. Because if this series is allowed to get any more popular, more and more older people are going to hop onto the Nintendo Switch bandwagon, and they are never, never coming back to gaming PC. And that is a thing that scares the gaming community. And it absolutely will happen as Nintendo continues to acquire new studios, develop more games, and produce more hardware.